ladies. Welcome back to the table. Welcome to Chapter 7. And Peggy, welcome to the Friendish conversation.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We love getting to work together. It's a fun time. And I know you were one of the first to meet Elicia. Too.
Yeah, we're so excited to get her on board. We were so excited to have her. It's been you're a great addition to our team.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm excited. She's
great team.
Amazing befriending people, and which we'll get into.
Yes.
So,
that's what we're talking about.
This chapter, it is exciting to kind of move to the practicality of what it means. We've already broken down, what's Friendish? And there's more to that, but now she's turning the page on how do we befriend? Who do we befriend? What do you do? All of that.
Yeah.
She calls it ripping up roofs.
Yeah.
So what's that all about right away?
Yeah.
What does it mean to befriend? Why does she even call that? I think that was important for us to.
I like that she started right away, and this has been the theme already about where our water comes from. And I just love that she said this new discovery about this living water forever redefined what we needed, and this life-giving water is so different from what the world offers. So I like that that's the place we started, and that's the discussion that's been for weeks now about where she's kind of laid the foundation, that this is a refreshing water. This is a real water that because of Jesus, our friendships are totally different. So instead of thirsting again, like salt water makes you still thirsty, this fresh water is so new and so refreshing that it bubbles over and we want to share. So I think it does kind of give us a great foundation to say, now what do our friendships look like?
I like how she starts off with the whole concept of what it means to redefine friendship. And I feel like so many of us have our own ideas of what friendship looks like.
For sure.
A lot of them, as we've been reading, are very off, right? Me personally. And I'm just like, ooh. But it just really helps me to understand the 3 questions she posed here. What does it mean to be a friend? Who we befriend and how we befriend. And I feel like, again, we all kind of just clump it all together and think, oh, well, I've got this friend, and they point me to Jesus, and that's enough. But she's really challenging us in our thought process of what that looks like. And I feel like for all of us, as we had talked before, it looks very different in those seasons. And so for me, I feel like she just jumped right into what does it mean to be a friend, and I feel like for me, I didn't really understand that I shouldn't just have friends that are pointing me to Jesus, but like, what does that look like to befriend people that are not believers? And I feel like so many times as Christian women, we tend to think that, okay, I just need to have this friend group that will have the same similarities. We have all the things in common, and they point me to Jesus and I feel comfortable, versus getting outside of that comfort zone and saying, okay, how are we befriending people who are not like us, who don't have any similarities, don't have nothing in common, and top that off with not even believers. And so I feel like this really challenged us to step back and think about, what does that look like?
Right. And she even says, welcome that tension. Yeah. So to be able to say that's real, there is real tension there, because we do tend to find ourselves with our Christian friends sharing more, and there's a great depth to that, but there's also a real need to reach out and to look like Jesus to someone who is not a believer. I like that she gave some real practical information. I mean, it was not just a bubble that says, okay, get out of your bubble and get over just always Jesus this and Jesus that, but she gave something really practical. She talked about listening well, seek to understand, ask good questions about what your friends believe and why, and then listen. I love that, because that's so practical. And sometimes it is harder because we don't have to listen so hard, because there's this place that we start with our Christian sisters. There's a place that we have that's in common, so we can go there so easily. This is harder, and it's harder on purpose, but it's also the way we can present Jesus to someone who isn't a believer. It's not necessarily, and you said this before, it's not necessarily always throwing the gospel out there, but it is how we act and it's what we do. And I love that we have to listen well, and we have to befriend means to get out of that comfort zone embrace the tension of somebody new and reach out. Be okay with that. Ask good questions. Learn more and ask things that are part of their life. Get involved with their life.
Right. Yeah. And care. I think the thing, compassion would probably be one of the key life lessons that the Lord has been really hitting home. Like, where's your compassion, Jenni, this whole year? And then even in this particular season with our culture and our nation and the climate is just crazy, it seems, in the world. And the question that I sense he keeps asking me is, where's your compassion? Care to love people, because that's why I came. Jesus came to love and to give himself for. And I love that she, we've got it right here even, she started with the story of the friends bringing the paralytic to Jesus. And that's why the whole chapter is titled Ripping Up Roots, because they did whatever it took to get their friend to Jesus, knowing that their friend needed Jesus' healing. And I think that's how we befriend. That's what it is. And if one of the greatest ways that God has reminded me to make friends with people who don't know Jesus is that I once didn't know him either. Absolutely. And just if I forget that that's where I've come from, then I don't have a compelling compassion for someone who has not yet experienced the living water and the friendship that Jesus offers, you know? Yeah. But he's, hey, if you didn't have people who shared me with you, you would not be here either. So love the people that I'm bringing to you and bring them to Jesus, whatever it takes. And that's when we listen well. I have a dear friend, and we think differently on most everything. She does not believe in Jesus yet, hasn't surrendered her life to Jesus, but we have a great friendship, and we share a bond because I believe she loves and cares for me. I do. And I know she has told me that she really trusts and cares for me and respects my faith. And so we have a lot of different dialogue, but if I just dismissed her because she didn't know Jesus, then that's not befriending.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not it. Not it.
I love how even she says on 101, Jesus' command was not to love your Christian neighbor as yourself, but to love your neighbor. Yes. And I feel like, again, as women who love Jesus, you know, we get that mixed up and we get it twisted and feel like that is, like you said, leaning into the tension and the hard places are very uncomfortable for many of us. You know, we tend to run away from the things that are hard and challenging to us versus coming at them and saying, okay, God, you know, help me, lead me into this and help me to be open to what you may be, you know, chiseling and changing out of my life. And so I feel like for me, I remember it was a season of life where I befriended a girl who happened to just help us in a season where we were looking for houses. And it was very apparent that she was not a believer. She convinced herself that she kind of was, but she wasn't, you know, just based off of lifestyle and just conversation. And so it made me uncomfortable at first. But not because of we didn't have the same common denominator of Jesus, but because of what others would think. And I really had to check my heart and be like, okay, God, you know, like you brought her into my life, you intersected her, and she's very curious, very open, very friendly. How can I love her where she's at, meet her where she's at? And going back to Jesus, you met me where I was at. In my lowest point, there was nothing good in me, even though I was self-righteous and in my own mind. And I was like, okay, God, so thank you for reminding me that you wanted me to meet her where she's at. And so to this day, we have a beautiful friendship. You know, we still keep in contact with one another. We definitely live in different states, but it just reminded me as I was reading this, like, yes, Lord, like you are still calling us to be ones who befriend those who do not know you. That's what it means to love your neighbor. And so, yes.
And it's easy being in the church because we are so committed to working even at the church. Has been that for years now has been a challenge of mine because I can easily get insulated in the Christian bubble and world where I might miss what it means to be a Christian in the world. And so having to be intentional to reach out, not maybe the best decision isn't join another small group in the church if you've got them already. You know, I think as women, it's like, okay, I'm going to do Bible study and MOPS and this and that and have every day filled with Christian community, which is beautiful. Our lives are filled and we should be living in Christian community. But in what way are we together then also
Right.
engaging those who don't, our neighbors who don't know Jesus yet?
Because that's still living.
Right.
You said living with,
Yes.
but we're still living. And we're living with so many different people that we can't pass them by or figure that we have enough friends. You know,
Right.
I'm sure most of us, I'm sure that's an easy thing to say. I have enough friends.
Right.
My social group is closed. Thank you very much. I have enough friends. But to really be open and to really see, just as you said, that people need the Lord and we need Jesus. And so making Jesus attractive sometimes is we have the challenge to reach out and to befriend someone that we wouldn't necessarily, they weren't crossing our paths at church.
Yeah.
And like you said, they weren't in our little group. And that's so easy because.
And it might not be the most comfortable even at times. Yeah. But I wonder too what, I know we had chatted on the clicking or
the
rubbing.
Yeah.
The clicking or the rubbing.
Yes.
In friendship. Who do we befriend?
Yeah. We again, our tendencies is to go towards those who we click with, the common denominators, similarities versus the ones that rub us the wrong way. And I feel like that's something that even within our Christian circles, but also even outside, like we have to be mindful of how we are loving people and caring about them in ways that, you know, we really got to stop and think about, okay, God, if you've intersected my life in this season of life that I'm currently in with somebody who is not like me, who I would rather pray them off to somebody else. God, you know her, let her be handled. Yeah, she's got her.
Really good friends.
You know, you already kind of go through your Rolodex of friends about who can be, you know, pawned off to. And I'm just like, but how dare us, you know, because God is very intentional.
I was just going to say,
he's very intentional.
Yes.
And oftentimes those are things that he's probably trying to change in us. And we're not willing to be confronted with that. And I feel like for me, I've definitely seen that in my life. I've definitely seen it in seasons, even as fresh as moving here and saying, okay, I'm not ready for this. And we don't know, you know, but God was like, but I've brought them here. So how are you going to steward what I've given you? And when we look at those things as gifts from God, then we look at it differently and our perspective is differently and how we move forward is differently. And so I feel like for me, that was definitely something that, again, I feel like all of us are still learning, but it was definitely, she hit home with that and hit to the core.
Yeah. And just this week had a conversation with a friend talking about just because we're comfortable with someone, that may not mean that that's for our good. That might not be a trusted space just because it's comfortable because in our flesh or maybe in our comforts, we tend away from Jesus at times. It's not always, clearly, when we read the Bible, it's not comfortable to follow Jesus. When he called people to follow him, he's like, hey, foxes have holes, birds have nests, but we don't have a place to lay our head. And so,
and leave your family.
Just do it all. So it's not a comfortable calling that we have. And so I think learning that who we have as friends, even if they're willing to rub, if there is a rub there, we shouldn't just be looking for groups of friends where there's no resistance.
There you go.
Because are we being shaped more like Christ, or are we just being left and good, not being pointed to Jesus?
And that's the whole goal we have to keep in mind. Like his purpose of sanctification, meaning changing us day by day, is to take out of us what is not of him, right? To purge us from those things that are not going to bring him glory. And so friendships,
he uses people.
He uses people as a part of that. He uses marriages, he uses our children, he uses all things, you know, for his glory and our good. And when we look at it from that perspective, then we're more welcoming versus resisting. And so I found that to be true.
Yeah. It's helpful to have that framework because even in this chapter, she reminds us too, it's not about just getting. Like befriending is giving and serving, and that's the Jesus way. And so there's different, and we've talked about that in previous conversations too, of there will be seasons of receiving more or giving more.
For sure.
But that was a big thing too this was even toward the end of the chapter when she was talking about seasons of friendship that we...
I mean, I love that she's kind of gives that acknowledgement that as we may have as familial transitions, like getting married and having children or grandchildren. With each new season, sometimes we get new responsibilities. So we can't hold that person to say, but you're my best friend. Now you have a child, and now you have a husband, and now you have all these other new responsibilities. But it's actually very selfish of us to actually feel like they're still mine. And she said, if we're seeking to fight for our friends' obedience to God and these priorities, not take away from them by demanding they meet our needs. That's again where we talked about the giving and the neediness. And I just think that's so true for different seasons. And I can look and see that at different times of my life, I was the needy one. And I had friends that were, we would sharpen each other, but it was about our children. It was some specific subject, or it was about, a specific, it kind of revolved around a particular thing. But I love that as God moves in our lives and seeing again Jesus through us, we can make those relationships through every season. So, but that seems to me that it happens all the time. I hear that about young moms, and I love that MOPS is a place where young moms can get even advice from seasoned moms that have been there and done that, and can say, hey, we see these things in your life and we've been there. We're here to come alongside and help. But really, some of those things happen at every season. But we have to be okay to know that that seasons are going to change, and you're going to hold on to some of those relationships, but we can't be the one that needs so desperately that we're actually taking away from where that person needs to move to with new responsibilities.
Yeah, I love what you talked about, because that's something we talked about regarding neediness earlier. And it was, and she says on page 97 that what it means to properly deal with your own neediness is having those types of friends that kind of, and we'll get to that later in the chapter about faithful wounds and things like that, but like realizing, I think, being self-aware of our own neediness, I think is another step that's very important, because I feel like for me, she's an example of being alone and wanting to have people to comfort her, and when her husband was on the road, and texting everybody and nobody
no response.
No response. And it's like, ooh, I mean, talk about really feeling in your feelings, but really being like, well, dang, like, does nobody not care? And then you kind of go through those insecurities and all those feelings, but she then remembers that Jesus is here this whole time, and like, well, what about me? I am your friend. And so I loved how she talked about and had these great bullet points on starting on 102 about when Jesus is our stability, when he is our security, we wrestle less with being insecure about these areas. When Jesus is our satisfaction and our companion, we can now be more interested and be more open-handed, and when those seasons come, we're not holding on to those friends for dear life and being like, no, don't leave me, but we're open-handed. And so I love how, again, it's pointing back to Jesus being our all in all, our everything, right? How he should be, because then it allows us to come out of a heart of gratitude and joy and less resistance, open to challenges and being more open-handed. So I feel like that's something we have to constantly be reminded of on it. And I know for me, I need to be reminded of that on a daily basis, and I feel like
moment by moment,
by moment, because
Yeah.
we tend to forget. And I feel like for me, this was such a great way to point me and my heart back to the reminder that Jesus needs to be my significance, because then I'm less offended, I'm more self-controlled, and just being a better friend.
Jesus is the greatest good we need.
And that's, we chatted earlier, because Jesus is our significance, we can be unoffended and self-controlled. I think that for me, and I hope for us as Grove women and just sisters in Christ, we can understand our identity in Christ is secure, and where we find our greatest significance. That's it. And so we don't have to be shaken but I found myself shaken even in this last year, navigating new relationships, new friendships, old friendships that were experiencing change. And I was like, and then new dynamics of like groups and things like that, to where I started to get offended if I'm being left out, or and I'm like, wait a second, what's going on? You know, and I was starting.
And social media
to be
doesn't
crazy.
help.
No,
right?
nothing helps like that. But it's funny. There will be times, even now, where new conversations will come up, and it, like you said, it's another little opportunity for me to wait a second. Like, will I be offended by that, or will I be glad for them and still know I'm good and give what I can, ask what I need, and just communicate and share rather than go cry in a hole by myself or in my room. I have no friends. You know, being a dramatic person.
Woe is
she
me.
even went there about communication.
Yeah.
She even went there. I think
it's
that's
important.
Yeah, it is.
We have to have that, because, and I have to learn so much more about that in order to grow in true, deep friendship.
I think another thing that helped me combat it, and I didn't necessarily, it wasn't talked about in here, but it was a reminder, is that when I often felt like, okay, I'm not connecting with this person, or man, I'm really struggling in this area to find friendships, or like just, you know, everything that we're talking about, I felt that I could be a cheerleader by connecting people. And I'm thinking, okay, wow, your story, you lost a parent, you know, in this season of life, and man, you just recently lost a parent. So I felt myself finding great joy and comfort and less insecure when I started focusing on others and saying, how can I connect these two? And being joyful that they connected, and now they're BFFs, versus being like, oh, woe is me, I got nobody, right? Because again, it wasn't about me. You know, and so I felt like for me, I found great comfort in knowing that that's what we're to do as well. You know, if that's pointing people to Jesus, that's pointing people to be able to connect with people that have similar stories and can be able to come alongside of one another. And I found great comfort in knowing that was something that I could do, and champion them, you know, like, yo, like, go y'all, like, you know, you guys are connecting and you're meeting up, because then they'll be able to see that and want to do that for other people. And so I feel like that's something that the Lord had to teach me. It took a while, but I felt like it was very rewarding.
And it's huge. One of my favorite verses says that, let us consider how to stir up one another to loving and Jesus. And that's a lot of how I see it. Like, how do we just champion, like you said, cheer one another on, really help people connect and grow. If we could have that mindset, I think that's what it means to be friends. Because we're pointing people to Jesus and to their good, which is maybe not going to be a friend. Like, maybe it's not me. Maybe it is Peggy.
Well, that's why
you
she
should be
said,
friends. Get along with
whatever it takes.
Whatever
so
it takes.
Sometimes that whatever it takes is the challenge is it's not, it may not be me as their center, like you were saying. I like that I may not be their center, but I still am involved, and I can be, you know, I can give the glory to God for how they connected. And the true friendship that we're looking for, according to, you know, what the Bible is helping us see, we have the same goal. We are, all of us are hoping to reach the finish line, to meet Jesus face to face. That's the aim. And so knowing however best you can get there, like, if that's what we're going to be about as friends, then that's what we want to be about. So I think that's exciting to consider. So good friends initiate. Good friends initiate
people to Jesus.
Conversations, ask questions, listen well, and point to Jesus. Absolutely.
And this, I think that's important for us as the very practical stuff. If we, a lot of times I can hear myself in my head, or I hear ladies share, well, nobody asked me or nobody reached out. And I can have great empathy for that, because we all have experienced that.
For sure.
But I think I'm thankful that we can reach out. That is because of who Jesus is, and our significance is found in him. We can initiate and say, hey, need a friend? I need a friend. And just put that out there too. I'm ready to hear and listen. And ask good questions to care about someone's soul, their heart, not surface level questions. I mean, I want to know if this shirt looks good. But then in addition to, like, how else can we listen to care for one another?
Absolutely. Another last thing I just personally wanted to share was the fact of, and I keep going back to Philippians 2, and I've said this before, but I feel like it's so important for us to remember this. Philippians 2 chapter, actually chapter 2, verses 3, it says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others." And I feel like I remember listening to a sermon with Piper with some ladies that we were walking in discipleship with, and he just laid it out there saying, counting others more significant, meaning they're better at something than you are. So how are you going to champion that and come alongside of them and be like, hey, like I'm so, like, I know that you're better in this situation than I am. And so like, how can I continue to champion you? How can you continue? Like, I want to learn from you. Like, it's humility. It's thinking less of ourselves. Or I am better in something and I want to make you better. You know, it's like all those things. And I'm like, man, like if we as women can do that for each other in seasons of life where we need that, I mean, how deep are those relationships going to be, and how fruitful are they going to be when we really think of others more significant than ourselves?
And
I feel
that's
like
true for every season.
It's true for every season. So I remember listening to that sermon. It still rocks me to this day, and it reminded me, as we're thinking about this, what that looks like and how we can be those types of friends.
And I love that. That passage rocks me.
Yes.
If I could just live there and
Yeah.
stay in Philippians 2 my whole life.
Yeah, every point.
Then I think.
And we're working
we'll
on
reach the
some of
finish line.
those all the time.
Yes, all the time.
All the time. So.
All the time. Good stuff.
This
So
is good.
I'm excited. We've heard so many great things from all of our ladies who are reading along with us, and I'm excited to be getting to the good stuff here. It's all been good, but how do we flesh it out now? How do we, how do we befriend? And I'm hopeful to hear of stories of new friends that we've made. And I know I have a couple new friends from my book club reading this, and so it's just been fun to see. So thankful for what God's doing in us. So thanks for joining the conversation.
Thank
and
you.
we'll see everybody back next week.
Yep.
That's good.